Welcome to Breaking Barriers. You know your path. We know the obstacles, and we can teach you how to tear them down. And now your host, CEO and founder of Adapting Social, John Vigero.
Welcome back to Breaking Barriers. I'm super stoked today to have my man Anthony here with me from AO. And dude, first off, for people who are like, who the hell is Anthony and what the hell is AO? And, what does that have to do, with houses? Because there's a lot of questions that we actually had that come in from our listeners on, some of the outdoor lighting, cons, pros, and different things. But for people like, who are you? Give us a quick summary.
Yeah, for sure. No, first and foremost, thank you for having me. I've been looking
Absolutely.
forward to this, talk with you, have this conversation. Like John said, my name's Anthony Raibick. We own architectural outdoor lighting. Obviously that's a mouthful, so we like to shorten that down to AO or AOL lighting. So we've had this business now on paper, and I'll get into why I say on paper in a moment, for just about a year now. Okay. The way in which we got started is my father actually owns a irrigation and landscape company. He's owned that since, I don't know the exact date, but over 30 years now. So naturally, being in the landscaping space, he would get lighting inquiries and he would wind up doing the jobs. And I come from a sales and marketing background. So I saw him putting out these jobs, putting out these, beautiful pieces of work that he's done. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, I'm curious. So I'm like, let me see, if there's an opportunity here, right, where we can really synergize and take this to the next level. So as I started to do my due diligence, looking up competition, people in the space, I noticed that there wasn't necessarily a big market player. Right. There wasn't somebody that was just taking over all the work and you heard their name every single time that lighting was mentioned. Right. So in getting that information, I went back to him and I was like, look, I think that we have a really good opportunity here, especially with, unfortunately, everything that's been going on with car thefts and burglaries and all of these, different types of unfortunate circumstances. Yeah. I think we have a really good opportunity here to really be able to capitalize on this market and make ourselves that market leader. So I went to him, he loved the idea. And that's why I say we've only been incorporated for a year, but he has 30 years of experience in doing it.
Got it.
Now it's just a matter of how can we tell everybody and make them aware that you do this and you're good at what you do. And that's where I come in, and that's where the business started.
That's amazing, man. It's so cool. And most people, are like, damn, how the hell could you work with your dad? Or, do you guys bump heads a lot? So how is that with you guys?
Yeah. So I mean, I think anybody that, you don't even got to be involved in business, but I think most people always hear the old adage of, never do business with family, never do that. I have to say that fortunately my experience has been so polar opposite to that adage. And I think something that really works between my father and myself is the way in which our minds operate. So as I mentioned over there in the beginning, I come from a sales and marketing background. I'm very good at looking ahead and seeing where the potential opportunities lie, not just now, but in the future as well. And he is a killer operator. I mean, he is just very good at making sure that when they talked about like Tim Cook and Steve Jobs, they said Tim Cook was the guy who made sure the trains came on time. That's my father in regards to the business. Right. So when you mix those two types of personalities together, you really do get something that the finished product is wonderful because you're not going after the same things. You actually complement each other. So working with him and his mentality being more on the operational side, mine more on the marketing, sales, vision side, it works out very well because then I can go to him with an idea of, hey, let's do X, Y, and Z. And then he can take that experience and, again, operating, the business that he has to then be like, I don't think that's a good idea, or I really like that. I think that there's an opportunity for that. So it's a very big collaborative process. And with our personalities complementing each other the way in which they do, it really has been an absolutely wonderful experience. And I really mean it when I say it. I love working with them. It's great.
That's amazing, man. And listen, I work with a ton of family too. Like, obviously my brother works here with me, and, I have cousins, family. I have a bunch of people in the business. Even one of my best friends actually is in the business too. So most like, don't work with friends, don't work with family. But you know what though? Listen, like you said, dude, I think the one thing for anybody out there that's listening right now, it's like when you come into it, like I think it's really clear about setting the right expectation. And what I like though about working with family or like a really good friend or whatever, again, it has to be the right fit, of course, but
Yeah.
you both are going after the same common goal. Like you and your father, you both want to succeed. You want this to work. You want this to do great things. That's a big deal, right? So like you both want that. You're both willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen.
Absolutely.
Whereas like, if it was just you and another employee or something, like it's a different situation, right? Because like they just want to get paid to go home, right?
Exactly.
So different thought process when you have two owner mentalities. And also the one thing I heard this on a podcast that I had recently, oh my God, I'm blanking on who told me this, but they're like the one thing that they liked working because actually I also work with my wife. My wife's my CFO. So it's like, that's like people are like, you're fucking nuts. But the thing is, at the end of the day, it's like, when you're both like, when you have like you and your father, there's nothing you're scared to say to him. And there's nothing he's scared to say to you because obviously you're his son and he's your father. And in normal business dynamics, people might not like to say everything. It's like, oh, I don't want to like offend Anthony, or like you might be like, hey, I don't want to offend them and have them quit on me. Where when you're two family, it's like you're gonna say everything because it doesn't matter. Like they're not going anywhere. So like,
exactly, they're not leaving. You can't just drop me off. I'm a little too old to just like drop me off at like an adoption center. Like I think I'm pretty much cemented my place in the family. So I'm good with that. But you made a good point too, and just to really add on to that as well is that when you're working with someone, whether it be friends, family, someone that you're very close with, what drives that person, right? Because that's always, people have a tendency to think that everyone thinks like them. And that's not the case. You know what I mean? Not everybody wants to be a multi-millionaire and have all these businesses. Some people just want to make sure that their kids can go to nice schools. They live in a nice house in a good community, and they can take a vacation a year. There's people that have those different mentalities. So rather than bringing somebody random in where you don't necessarily know where their motivation lies, you intimately know that person due to the fact that you've been around them for so long that you understand what's driving them. And I think that allows you to really form the business in a way that suits everybody and that everybody's happy. And obviously, the more happy people you have in the company, the more your company is going to continuously succeed and move forward and progress. So that's big too.
I do want to touch on one point you brought up earlier, and I think it's so important. So like the home that I just recently bought, my neighbor has a really, really good outdoor architectural lighting. But the one I bought, there's some decent lights. I had to talk to actually, side note, but because my house, Jacqueline's car, somebody broke into her car, and this is before I started putting the cars in the garage, like both of them. And the one thing I said, I was like, because at certain parts of our property, there's like, little dark patches here and there or whatever. And to your point, I think, outside of how sexy it could look with having cool uplighting or downlighting or whatever, it's like when you have light everywhere and there's clearly everybody's cameras now, right? But if you have light everywhere, your house is a lot more intimidating to approach.
Exactly.
Because it's so lit up. And I don't think most people think that way all the time. Of course, people put floodlights and spotlights and stuff on like, driveway cams and stuff. Like, if your whole entire home is just fucking lit up, around everywhere, including the garage, the front doors, whatever else, it would be crazy for somebody to walk up and like looking like it's broad daylight and to walk up to your house. When that. So how many people do you have reach out to? Is there a majority of people reach out like, hey, I want it for that reason? Like, what do you hear?
Yeah, for sure. So it really comes down to three main buckets, I would say. The reason that people reach out to us. The first one, like you just mentioned, is for the security purposes.
Right.
And it has been proven from a psychological standpoint that if like a robber, intruder sees a house that's well lit as opposed to one that isn't, they will target the one that isn't as well lit from a subconscious perspective. Like they're not even realizing that they're targeting that, which is massive. It's huge. So that would be the first bucket. The second one is just overall property safety. So, think about having kids running around, you're having play dates. Let's say you have a pool, you want to have pool parties. Kids, they get into everything. They're not thinking, whereas you and I may be like, oh, I shouldn't do that. I might hurt myself.
Right.
That reflex isn't in kids yet. So having more illumination and allowing them to see where they're going when they're running around with their friends or people that they have over is always another reason or a big reason that people reach out. They want to make sure that it's safer for their kids and they have a lot more visibility for themselves when, they have, let's say they have elderly parents, they have grandparents coming. They want to make sure that, they're not going to slip and fall or have some sort of, event like that happen, and lighting naturally helps with that.
Right.
And then the third and final bucket is, like you said, sexy curb appeal.
Right.
People love the curb appeal of the house, and it really does make a very big difference because a lot of people don't realize this, and I didn't either until I really delved into the industry as a whole. Mm-hmm. Adding lighting to your house, and I was actually mind blown when I saw this, adding lighting to your house can increase the property value in the house or the home by anywhere between 15 to 25%. I read that and I was like, there's no way.
How's that possible?
I'm like, there's no way. And then I started cross-referencing it across a bunch of different sources, and they were all in that similar bucket. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, this is now increasing the property value of homes too. Right. So it really, those are the three main buckets, but there's so many other benefits that really come from getting nice lighting at your home that a lot of people don't even realize that they would get. So those are the three, but we always like to educate people. That's how we really, whenever we go to an on-site assessment or a consultation with somebody, our point isn't to try and make as much money as we can and run off. You know what I mean? It's really more so communicating with the potential customer. What are you looking for? How can we get this done for you in a way that it makes fiscal sense and that we're not going crazily over budget? And how can we really drill this in to meet your unique tastes? Because lighting is a very dynamic industry. And if you're just going with sort of a, template cookie cutter, this is what we do, some people don't resonate with that. Some people like shadowing on the house. Some people don't like it at all. They think that it, gives it kind of like an eerie feel to it. Some people like path lights. Some people don't. So there's a lot of uniqueness that comes with it. So when we're going and having these conversations with people, it's really it's a very friendly conversation. And I always describe it as a very collaborative process, right? How can we make sure that we're getting you exactly what you need for whatever those three buckets that we just discussed are? But more importantly, how are we going to do that so you're not getting buyer's remorse and you're not coming back after the fact like, wow, I don't even know why I just spent that. Because that's the last thing we want. We want to make sure that when you're done, it looks beautiful. We form a relationship with you. And that way, our hopes is that you tell your friends, your family, hey, these guys took care of me, that my house looks great, So it even goes beyond the actual lighting itself, but it's the overall customer experience as well.
Yeah, that's huge. What's been the most difficult part for you? Because this is your first venture, right?
Second.
Oh, second. Okay. So what was your first?
Mosquito business. Your mosquito.
Oh, that's right. That's right. So in both then, I guess, what has been one of the biggest challenges for you as like a newer business owner? Like, and what did you learn from that biggest challenge?
I would say the biggest challenge as a new business owner is you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So let's say that, and I was very fortunate. I grew up, like I mentioned before, my father had the irrigation and landscape business. Yeah. So I had an understanding of what it took, but it's one thing to see something. It's another thing to conceptualize it and then apply it. So that was a very big part of things is that, okay, we started a business. Well, now what do I do? Okay, I have my paperwork done, but where do I go from here? And that's where the first venture that, we dove into with the mosquito business, that's really was a massive, massive benefit to what we've been able to do with lighting, because the mosquito business, I learned so much about marketing, how to get out there to the customer. What does a good customer experience even look like, because if you don't have a business, what is a good customer experience? Do you know how to translate that across? So taking the experience I got from the mosquito end of things and then applying that to lighting has allowed us to scale very, very quickly in regards to our brand presence and awareness. So I think that a big part of it is really you don't know what you don't know. and you don't know how to, get your name out to people. You don't know a cost-effective way, because a lot of the times when we start our businesses, we don't start them with massive budgets. Like we don't, like that's just not the way to go about doing it. Again, people will disagree with that. It's just the way that I view it.
Well, I mean, realistically, if you start off with a massive budget as a new business, you're not going to be in business long.
Yeah.
If what you're doing isn't working, right? You obviously be ready for plan B or plan whatever.
Exactly. People are, it's kind of putting the cart before the horse. People are throwing all this money into a business, then you don't have a proof of concept. You don't even know if this is going to work. Right. And that's where I think a big advantage comes from starting at that 0 point, because you learn the skill sets to be able to get out there with not a lot of budget. So once you get more capital inflow and your name starts to get out there more, it just makes you that much more dangerous of an entrepreneur, because now you know where to allocate that capital so that you can continuously expand the business, and you're doing it in the right way. So that's always, a big part of things in regards to, starting at 0 or starting at 1 as opposed to higher.
And even just dive in deeper to that, because I think one of the things that can lead a business to death, right? A terrible, going out of business or death, right? Is not knowing what you don't know. And I think one of the bigger things, in my journey is like doing the research, but also reaching out to people. Like in every industry, whatever industry anybody's listening into here, like if you reach out to somebody, like as an example, I have a guy who is starting a fitness business, and he reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, I'm looking for XYZ and stuff." And I'm like, because it's a unique part of fitness. Like they want to do they're going to buy a big trailer and then come to your house with like a complete gym, and you don't have to leave your house and have a complete gym. And I'm like, well, that's a new concept, right? Like people have to do workout at home, right? And trainers go in their house, but like you should go out and you should search somebody in California or in a different market that's not going to be like, fuck you, I'm not giving you my secrets. And go see like what they know. A lot of times they'll give you insights. Oh, I bought this trailer and that's hurting my business because I'm spending so much every month on this trailer or whatever. So like everybody out there, like what you don't know, not only can hurt you, but it can kill you. Right. So like, as a business, so it's like, go do that research. And go also ask some people that are in the space, that are succeeding in the space, that are not local, that won't be competitive with you. Right. Because again, local competitors are going to tell you to go fuck yourself. But people who are not competitive with you, a lot of times good business owners that have done well want to see other people succeed. Right. So they'll be like, hey, here's what I would do differently, and like ask the right questions. Right. Like I think one of the biggest things I learned from Tony Robbins was, if you're not asking the right questions, you're not going to get the right answers. If you're not curious enough, you're not going to get the right questions in your mind. So it's like, how can I succeed? What do I need to succeed? Where did you fail? Like, what would you do differently if you were to start all over again? And they're going to give you all the cheat codes that you can then apply from day one, right? Like that's huge. So, things like that really help. And also secondly, I would say too, where you said, you don't know what you don't know, but also you don't know who you don't meet, right? Everyone says, oh, it's all about who you know, right? In your world, obviously, pairing up with some influencers and people out there who are huge and like, whether it's real estate or home decor or architects or whatever, it's like, like those are the people that are like hey, I want to buy your office like pizza or like subs or whatever, and come in and kind of talk about us and what we do and stuff, and building those relationships and hosting those events and stuff. Because it's like those people, like, again, when I started, I was a kid, I was a teenager, and I didn't know anybody, and I'm, trying to talk to business owners who are double my age, and, and they're like, I'm not like, who the fuck is this young guy, high school, like, in a suit looking like a chooch, like who is this guy? And it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, I went out there and I took the time to build those relationships, and I always thought it was like, it's all about who you know, but like you have to look deeper into that, because like, how do you know somebody, right? Either you might get lucky and you have a good family who knows everybody, and then they're just like, oh, that's John, but I didn't have that blessing, so I had to go make all these relationships from scratch everywhere. And also sometimes you have friends who have good contacts, right? Like, so it's like, like in your case, like Sal Ventry, great contact, real estate dude, like, like that. And it's like, those are big things in business. It's like, it's who you go out and take the time to meet and put effort behind. And I'll never forget, there was this one example at Tony Robbins where this guy was like, there was this huge client he was trying to pitch, and for years, because it's like a multi-million dollar deal. And he was like calling their office every day. He was trying to get in touch with them. The secretary's like, oh, it's you again. Like, stop calling us. Like, we're done. Like, stop. We don't want to work with you. And then finally he was like, you know what? Why are people doing business, right? Why are people like, getting, architectural lighting, right? Whether it's for aesthetic or it's for protection. And this person was like, all right, what? I have to think about this. This guy has kids, and I see it on Facebook and stuff that's due his kids. So what he did was he went and wrote this big ass, this big letter with and got like a bunch of cool stuff in a box, and got him Disney tickets for him and his kids to go on an exclusive Disney, like on site in the palace, like that crazy experience, all this stuff for him and his kids. It was like a full week of shit that he can use whenever he wanted to. So it wasn't like a date.
Yeah.
And he wound up working with the guy eventually, and it was a multi-million-dollar deal. But that's the point. Is like when you meet people, it's not just about meeting people. It's also about like, how can I add value to their life, right?
Exactly.
Because business, of course, can be transactional, right? That's what business is when you take all the emotions out of it. But when you look at how business gets transacted, it's because somebody likes you enough to say, I'm going to work with Anthony or John, right? Like I think, but for people out there listening, like you have to make those efforts to make that happen too, to build those relationships, and then think about how you can add value to that relationship, And I think that's the key here too. So it's, again, not just who you know, but who you go and take the time to meet and build that relationship with that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And to, you made a good point there in regards to, the questions. And this is kind of an epiphany that I had recently.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there one day, and I've noticed that as I've gotten more involved in business and I'm more advanced in business, I don't know why I thought this, but I realized I'm like, wait a minute, I'm asking better questions. Instead of, how can I get to, let's say 1,000 next week, how can I get to 10 to 20 to 30? And then I kind of had that, like I said, epiphany where I was like, the quality of your life and the quality of your business is based upon two things.
Right.
The questions, the levels of the questions that you ask yourself,
right,
and then having the discipline to act on those answers that you get.
Right.
So when you combine the two together, it's really, a very good concoction for having a great business, having a great quality of life as a whole, right? Because obviously business is a livelihood, and we want to avoid death as much as possible. And the biggest part of it too, with the relationships and everything like that. I mean, I'll use myself as an example. I've called every single architect and custom builder in Morris and Bergen County. I've called them and introduced myself to them.
Yeah.
And people think like, they get so scared. Like they get this analysis paralysis where it's like, oh, like I can't do that. And it's like, it's not overly complex. You just got to do it. You just got to do that work. You have to put yourself in front of these people. You have to make those relationships. You have to make make yourself known out there. Because if no one knows who you are, you don't have anything. Right. I mean, you definitely get that more than anybody, considering that you're running a marketing company.
Right.
You get that. But, again, I think people really get in their own ways in regards to, I have to do X, Y, and Z, and they try and make it all fancy. And it's like, just pick up the phone and dial. People are so scared nowadays to, even order a pizza on the phone. Just call people. You know what I mean? Like, hey, what's going on? You're not trying to pitch them on anything. Just make yourself known. You know what I mean? If you need anything in the lighting space, I would love to be your point of contact there. Set up lunches with people, go to networking events. I mean, even this podcast came from me going to Sal's networking event.
Yeah, right.
Like I'm a firm believer in them. I go to as many as I can because you never know when you're going to have the right conversation that takes you into the next level. The bigger room, it expands your business. So I think if people really just got out of their own ways and just did what needed to be done, then it would work out a lot better for them. And on top of that, it's only hard in the beginning. And when I say it's only hard in the beginning, the hardest step is the first one. And this applies to, life, fitness, everything. People delay that first step. And if you just get out of your own way, you keep your head on straight, and you just shut your mind off and you just go, things wind up working out. And then it gets easier. You know what I mean? Like the first time I ever made a call to somebody, the guy literally, I'm pretty sure he laughed me off the phone. He's like, you got to get better at your job. And I was like, this was my first one. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, great. And that crushed me a little bit. Now, I could tell me to go fuck myself, and I'm like, all right, cool. Well, I'll call the next guy. It's just like you don't even think about it anymore. So
statistically, more no's you get, the closer you are to a yes, right?
Exactly.
Like, that was always my mentality when I was cold calling, hardcore, and door knocking and stuff. And at the end of the day, it's like you got to keep pushing through that bullshit to get closer to the yes and to get closer to these things that are going to get you those. But I think what you said is really, really smart. And I think people need to definitely listen to that, because when you're going to events, I'm a big believer in what you just said, where it's like, you don't know who you're going to meet at an event. And most times when you like don't want to go to an event, or you're like, oh, another event or whatever else, it's like, that's the event you're going to meet somebody there. Right. And like the cool part is, like, again, that event that, that I met you at, like, I wasn't going to go to that event. Right. Like my wife, we just had twins, and there's a ton going on and stuff. And at that time I was still like, I wasn't really like, I was working from home really. And, and then I was like, you know what, I'm going to go, especially because again, Sal's always at my stuff. And I'm like, I got to go support him too. And, I'm sure I can, I know all his friends, I know obviously your sister and stuff. And I'm like, maybe they'll all be there. And I got there, and there was some, outside of meeting you, there was a lot of good people there too, that were like, even, some people I gave some advice to for marketing. They're like, damn, I'm spending all this money. And, and I shared something with them that they're like, wow, like, why didn't I know this? I didn't have to spend all that money on this one particular ad when I could be doing it better and optimize it this way. Right. So it's like, like I got value that day, I got to meet you, which is cool. I've heard of you. Right. But I finally got to meet you, and talk to you.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. So it's like, that was cool. So to your point, like, again, go out there and do those things, because that's where you meet people. But also, dude, everybody's scared to fucking pick up the phone now. And I hate that. Like, people don't want to go door knocking. They don't want to pick up the phone and stuff. And that's why, honestly, and like the biggest thing for me is like, Dana White said this so well, but he goes, if you're a bad motherfucker in this world, like you're going to steamroll everybody, because everybody's soft. Like, everybody doesn't want to pick up the phone. They don't want to be out there in the heat, door knocking or doing work. They don't want to do manual labor. They don't want to go to networking events. They don't want to put in the hard work. But the fortunate part about people like us is that, like, we're going to do that work. And the good thing is, like, you saw your dad do it, so you were programmed to do that.
Exactly.
So my dad didn't own a business, but he was in, blue collar construction worker, never missed a day of work, was always there, like worked his fucking ass off. And it's like, that's what I grew up watching. Right. It's like, for me, it's like, I'm not scared to get out there and do those things. And I think that's the biggest thing for people, is like, they're terrified to get out there and make these moves. And it's like, you need in business, you need to make relationships, you need to get clients, you need to get sales. Sales is the lifeblood of every business. If you don't have sales, you don't have a fucking business. So it's like, you got to pound the phones, you got to get out there, you got to shoot cold emails, you got to door knock, whatever else. But all in all, this is good stuff. So where can people find you, Ant? If they're looking for you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so people could find me. I'm always on the lighting Instagram page, and that's at AOL Lighting, like the old webs and email.
That,
AOL Lighting. AOL Lighting. So it's you can find us on there. That's where all of our projects, everything is. My personal too is at Ant Raibick, ANTRAIBICK. Right. So if anyone has any questions, they want to, dip their feet into business, they don't really know where to start. Again, I'm always open to having a discussion and talking to people. And, I like to help. Like you said, people that have seen success in business, they like to help. And I do think that's very true, because when you see people that come to you with those struggles and that you can help them out with that, right, well, then, it's a good feeling. I think that most people inherently are good, and they do want to help other people around them. Right. And that's been my experience as well. And, talking with, people like yourself, Sal, people that are ahead of me in regards to, how you guys have expanded your businesses. Right. And just, becoming a sponge. I think that it's such a cliche, because they're like, it's like, be a sponge, but it's true. Like, read, learn, YouTube, like, it's so easy nowadays. You can be driving. I mean, I drove down to the shore area today, hour drive. I was listening to a podcast. And even if you don't think you're retaining anything, your subconscious is picking all that up. So, it's just continuously educating yourself, and just don't be lazy. Just don't be lazy.
That's the damn key, man. Like, and everybody wants the shortcuts. People are inherently lazy. We want the easy road. We want the hard road. Like, and that's subconscious too. It's not just conscious level. Like, your body wants you, your subconscious mind wants you to have the easiest experience with the less pain for survival. Exactly. And it's like, we, have to make that conscious decision to keep moving forward. So, all right. So I got two final questions for you here before we pop off here. Okay. I got one that's a little more difficult, and one's a little medium, a little mild spice. Which one do you want first?
Give me difficult. Let's start it off hot.
I love it. I love it. Love it. And again, just so you know, we've been asking that question for like almost 4 years now, to hundreds of entrepreneurs, and maybe like 5 or 6 of them said, give me the easy one first. So it's really in line with the characteristic of an entrepreneur. Give me the hard shit, throw the fucking shovel at my head first.
Yeah, not me.
So, all right. So anyway, all right. So, a lot of times with legacy, we think about where our feet are planted here today, down the shore here where you are today, and thinking about what you're going to leave behind forward, right? And you don't have kids, right? Or anything like that yet?
No.
Okay.
No, I
So,
do not have kids.
so this is a little bit even, when you have kids and stuff, it's a little easier to think this way, but obviously you're gonna have to predict that in this equation. So I want to reverse engineer this all, right? So instead of you thinking about like, okay, what am I leave behind, whatever else, I want you to think about the end in mind. And obviously, not that we want the scenario, just a little simulation. But if your future kids were at your gravestone, right, which is obviously going to supersede, you, them, your gravestone is going to be there for as long as this planet's here, pretty much. If they were sitting there, your kids, okay, your future kids, with their kids, and they're like, man, if you met Grandpa Anthony, he was X. What do you want them to say? And what do you want your wife to say when they're in a room thinking about what you did on this planet and who you were?
So that's a great question, first of all. That really is a good question. I think that in terms of kids, grandkids, spouse, I think that the best compliment that you could ever receive is he was a great husband. He was a present, an amazing father. And even with being those things, he still had the time and he deployed the effort to give us a beautiful life. And the reason that I say that is because that's how I regard my own father. I mean, he's my best friend. Like I work with him. I talk to him probably more than any of my friends that I even, converse with on a daily basis. And I think that, seeing people that didn't have those types of relationships with their parents and, people around them has really made me very fortunate for what I have and what is at the table and how rare that really is to, have someone that able to build this beautiful life for us while still maintaining. He was at all of our games. He coached us in sports. Anything we wanted to do, he always encouraged us to do it. He employed a very good mindset in us to, go after whatever you want. There's no limitations on what you can do. You know what I mean? So for me, in trying to emulate what he's done for us, I think that the best thing that could ever be said is that he was a great and present husband, father, grandfather, and he still had the time and deployed the effort to really build us the life and the dreams that we couldn't even imagine had he not been part of our lives.
Wow. I love that. That's amazing. I mean, well said. You really knew that. Bam, ready to go there.
I had the hard one good. I handled that well.
You handled it well. You crushed it. And so now the more easier one, but I guess maybe be harder for you. I don't know. But so the next one is there been any quotes that stand out to you when you think about being resilient, right? So in business, obviously, there's not always yeses. You're getting rejected. You have tough times, you have good times, you have high months of making good money, you have low months of not making great money. When you think of resilient, is there a quote that stands out to you? It could be your dad original, something you heard, like something you saw online, like what sticks out to you?
Funnily enough, I think that one of the best quotes that really summarizes resilience and doing the things because all resilience I really find is that being able to get punched in the face and keep doing the things that you don't want to do long past that feeling has come. Right. So actually in my yearbook in high school, when they, how they ask you for the quote, like things like that, the quote that I put in there was Muhammad Ali. I'm sure you're familiar. I hated every second or every minute of training, but I thought to myself, don't quit, keep pushing, and one day you'll be a champion. I probably butchered that a little bit. It was it's the same basic concept. It's the same framework of it. But I think that that's so true because you're not going to wake up every day happy. You're not going to wake up every day ready to go. Some days, you can get a great night's sleep and you do all the things right and you wake up and you're just not in a good mood. It's just for whatever reason, the body just doesn't want to cooperate that day.
Right.
But, if you're able to get those days and you're able to push through them and you're able to be that resilient and gritty person, then nothing's going to be able to stop you because most people, aside from what we were talking about before with the whole laziness factor, if they're having a bad day, it's a mental health day or, oh my God, this year is just beating me up. And it's like, is it though? Like, why don't you think about it a little bit differently? Are you sure this isn't just part of the human experience?
Right.
If you were happy all the time, and this is going to sound a little weird, but if you were happy all the time, how would you know what happiness even is?
Right.
How would you know?
Yeah.
It'd be normal. You know what I mean? You would just be your regular state of mind. You wouldn't even boring. It'd be boring. Exactly. It'd be like, oh, like, you know what I mean? Like just another day. So you wouldn't even appreciate the emotion for what it is. So I think that quote really embodies obviously the mindset of a champion, with Muhammad Ali being the greatest boxer of all time, and exactly how you should approach life. In that, even if you hate it, keep going, and you're going to get to where you want to go, and you're going to get that final outcome that you're looking for.
Yeah, man, I love that. It's so fire, man. It's so fire. And it's an oldie but goodie. And one thing though, too, like, you just made me think, like, I gotta go look back at my yearbook quote. I don't know what I said. Go back to your high school yearbooks and figure out what you said. But I want to look at that. But that's a good one, man. And you know what? At the end of the day, you know, back to experience, like, you know, when you think about the highs and lows of businesses, I tell all the entrepreneurs that I talk to all the time, like, you know, in the past 16 years that I've been doing this, there's been some fucking great days, weeks, months, years, and there's been some tough ones, dude. And it's like, you know, in business, that's the thing. It's like, it's not about, you know, who's there first, it's who's the last man standing, right? Because that's why most people go out of business, because they're not willing to withstand the challenges and the things that come with owning a business or running and operating a company. You know, and it's a lot. You know, you have a lot of pressure, you have a lot of people like depending on you, and you know, for some people, you know, it's too much to bear. And they're like, all right, you know, I'm folding it up. But you have to be that person that's like willing, like you said earlier, you know, you get punched as a business owner, you're getting punched in the face and in the nuts and in the stomach, you know, regularly, right? And you just got to get used to it and move on, right? Like it just becomes a natural thing. So, and the one thing I want to say too, and I think happiness, you know, I had this conversation with a podcast guest a couple weeks back. But like, you know, I've really realigned what happiness means to me. Most people, like, we live in the most depressed era, at least on record, you know, that we've heard of. People are just astronomically depressed and anxious and all this crazy shit. And then it's like, you know, everybody's comparing themselves to other people because of social media, and they see other, you know, this happening for these people they went to high school with, but they're not there yet. So they're like, damn, I suck, I'm not succeeding. And you know, I started to think about, like, damn, what's the value behind happiness, right? When you look at most of the most successful people, you brought up Steve Jobs earlier. Steve Jobs is not known for being a happy-go-lucky dude. Neither is Elon Musk. Neither is Jeff Bezos, even though he has a crazy, like, evil guy laugh, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you look at any of these guys, they never valued happiness, right? They never looked at it like, oh, I want to be happier. I want to be happier. And I think that was what to me, you know, happiness has become this fluid thing that's like, I should always be happy, right? Where in most countries around the world, like, people don't value happiness the way that we do here. A lot of countries around the world, they look at happiness and like, why are you so extra? Like, why are you being so extra? They think we're being fake because we're constantly like in a better mood or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I shifted that to, it's like, you know, for me, it's more about, you know, being in a place where, you know, I'm content with the things that I enjoy doing. You know what I mean? Like, I enjoy, you know, running a business. I enjoy getting things, you know, again, when I find myself in a place where I am in a challenge, right? And like, I need to get through this challenge. You know, I typically look at those as like, this is a learning opportunity for me to grow in.
Exactly.
And, you know, that's what I value. I want to grow. And if I'm in a difficult position, that means I can learn something. If I'm in a position, most people don't learn anything in positions. That's the key, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And good stuff. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. My internet was a little messed up right there, so I wanted to make sure I'd heard everything you said. But you hit the nail on the head there. You really did in regards to happiness, because that's even a conversation that I've internally had with myself in asking, you know, what is happiness? You know, when people are just like, I want to be happy, it's a very interesting, it's an interesting concept, because you think about it, you want to be an emotion. That's not how emotions work. You know what I mean? Right. It's they come and they go, they ebb and they flow. So exactly, right. I think that your definition is perfect. Being content in what you're doing, enjoying what you're doing in your day-to-day basis. I think that leads into those happy times, and even the challenges. You know, overcoming a challenge has been the happiest I've ever been in my life. because
Right.
you know how much you put into making sure that you conquered that. And
Right.
knowing that it's something that's hard that most people aren't willing to do gives you that
Mhm.
level of satisfaction, and it gives you that confidence to keep doing hard things, keep winning the war with yourself, keep building upon your own self-identity. And I
Mhm.
really believe that that ultimately leads to that long-lasting happiness where you can look back at your life and say, I gave it everything I had.
Right.
Because that's the one emotion that I would never want to, or one feeling I would never want to die with, and that's regret.
No, right. And a lot of people, and too many people do, right? So, we definitely don't want that. But Ant, this has been amazing, dude. I'm grateful for your time. I'm a big believer in time is the one asset we don't get back. So you spending it here today with me and our listeners means the world to me. Again, one more time, where can people find you?
Yep, absolutely. And it's been awesome talking with you, John. This is a good conversation. They can find me at AOL Lighting on Instagram. And they can find me on my personal on Instagram, and that's at Ant Raibick. I also forgot to plug this before. I'm starting to get into the TikTok wave. Again, I'm a little bit.
Go.
So I'm starting. I'm slowly but surely. But they can also, it's also at AOL Lighting on there as well. And we got some good content coming soon. So again,
Love it.
reach out to me on any of those avenues. More than happy to talk or, help you out with lighting.
Love it. All right, Ant, you're the man. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely, John. Talk to you soon.